Click the bell icon to get latest videos from Ekeeda.
Hello friends, today we are going to discuss about Remote Procedure Call or RPC as a mechanism of client-server communication. How it is actually implemented using the port, stub, and what are the issues faced in RPC and how to resolve them. The most common form of giving remote procedure calls is an RPC mechanism. The RPC allows an abstract to procedure call mechanism. The abstract is used to use the system communication where the computers are connected via network. Here, RPC can given a port number to each of the system and the system are connected to a network and the network can serviced with an IP address. It is similar to many cases of the IPC mechanism and built in top over such a system. But the main difference between the IPC and RPC is that RPC is more constructed message. The RPC messages are constructed and more than just a packet of message. The RPC calls are messages which the port numbers are identified over the network. These port numbers can be defined to identify the functionality of the system. The unique identification of the function to be executed and the parameters to be passed to the function are then given to the port numbers. The function then executed by the server and the result are displayed in a reply message or in a separate message by the server to the client during the RPC calls. As we are dealing with an environment that involves processes from different computers connected via a network, we must use a message-based communication for RPC calls. A port is just a number that is attached to the start of the packet message. Now the port can be defined for specific services provided by the server. Now the network can have many port numbers while it have only one IP addresses. These different port numbers are addressed different services by the server. Now suppose if an user wants to allow other users or other system to allow its current user listing, then it must allow and indicate such an RPC by the port number say 3027 and the other systems must make call to that RPC on port number 3027 to actually get the result. The semantics of a remote procedure call or RPC mechanism is to invoke a procedure call that would have been done in locally. The same as a remote procedure call is in local procedure call. The main difference is that in RPC, it hides all information about the communication which is going to take place, indicating a stop in each of the client and server side. When a client approaches and requests for an appropriate RPC, then the RPC or remote procedure calls an appropriate stub, which in turn then calls the function and marshals the parameter to the function. Now, parameter marshalling is always known as packaging the parameters in such a way so that it can travel over the network. The server stub then awaits for the client request for the connection to get established. After the connection is made between the client and server, then any system call or procedure call in a remote system can be made and the function will get executed and it displayed the message as a separate reply message in the client program. The stub then transmits the message to the server and along with all the parameters of the function to be executed. On a client side, along with the same type of stub is then invoked, same type of procedure call is then made and the function got executed that we made on the server side, which displayed the result on the client side. Now in Windows, a media interface designation language like MIDL can be used to design such RPCs. There are many concerns that is to be addressed during we make an RPC. The first is the data representation scheme differences between the client and server program. Suppose there is a 32-bit representation of an integer. There are two methods. One is a big endian, where the most significant bit comes first, and there is a little endian, where the least significant bit comes first. Now there is no better between these two choices. The choices are arbitrary depending on the computer architecture. But when a remote procedure call happens over this type of difference in data representation of the client and server program, then big difference can occur. So the remote procedure call apply a mechanism that is machine independent data representation, also known as external data representation or XDR. Now on the server side, the data marshalling parameter done with the help of RPC by changing the data machine dependent one to the XDR, and the client side it then done that changing the XDR to the machine dependent data representation of the server program. In this way, XDR can deal with the difference between the data representation and solve the problem easily. Now another concern which is happen in the RPC is the mechanism or semantics of the function call. Where a local procedure call fails only in an extreme circumstance, but a remote procedure call fails, executes or duplicates more than one time due to a several general network error. There are two procedures concerning addressing, known as exactly once and at most once. The local procedure generally implements its exactly call procedure, but its mechanism is very difficult to implement. We will first start with the at most call execution. In an at most call, a timestamp is attached to every message that is to be passed between a client and server program. Now when a server is receiving a message, then it should take a track history about the timestamps that are the messages it has already processed, or a history that is large enough to identify the repeated messages. Then the server or the client can send messages to more than once to at most once that the execution will be made possible. Now for the exactly once, the server never wants to deal with that the client doesn't get the request at all. The server sends an acknowledgement message to the client every time it receives a message from the client. So the client sends messages to the server repeatedly until an acknowledgement message against one message is received by the client. In that way, it can be ensured that the service will be requested exactly once by the server that is being requested by the client. Another important issue regarding the remote procedure call is the binding. In the local procedure call, some binding on information is done at the load time, linking time, or execution time. The same should be done in the client-server program too, but the main problem here is the client or a server doesn't know the port number of each other. The system never have full information as they do not share the actual memory of data. Now this concern can be addressed in two ways. The number one way is the port number is known in a predetermined way, that the RPC is providing a fixed port number for a particular service. At the compile time, the host is given a port number, say 3025, any fixed port number to a service. After a program being compiled, this fixed port number cannot be changed for a client-server communication. After the RPC call is made and the service request is serviced, then the port number can be changed. Another way of using this address concerning is a matchmaking mechanism. We will see how to do that with a diagram. So in this second context, first the client calls the kernel to send the RPC to find the port number. So here the message is from the client to the server, the port is kernel till now and it is finding the port number. So the server here, then the kernel sends the message to the matchmaker that what message to be sent. Now the kernel sends the message to the server. Again the server receives the message that it is finding the port number and replies with the port number, say P. So now the message is from the server to the client. Here the port is now kernel and it is the RPC remote procedure call X of the procedure. The port number is P. Next the kernel places the P under the message. Next, kernel sends the remote procedure call. Here, from the client to the server, the port is P. And it is actually written the contents or the messages or the services that are requested. Now the server receives the message and processes the output. Now after processing the output, it is sending the result back to the client. Now the message is, here it is very important that it is from the client using the port P and it is to the server, that is to the client port kernel. Now it is actually sending the output. Now the kernel receives the output and passes it to the user or the client to the actual use of that user. Now RPC system is practically useful for distributed file system as the systems are now different connected via a network. The file system can then operate many operations like read, write, delete, copy and move of the file data. The RPC would invoke a remote procedure as a local procedure on the file system and then perform these operations on the desired files. All the system calls should be file related and the user will get that reply in a separate message, as we have already told that the remote procedure will send the file system's output to the client. In this way, RPC can help in easier communication between the distributed file systems that is separated by miles. Thank you for watching this video. Stay tuned with Ekeeda and subscribe to Ekeeda.